Hello all, this is Nate and welcome to Vintage Rails. In this video I will be discussing the history of the Santa Fe and later BNSF Harbor Subdivision. In fact, the train in the intro to my videos is on the Harbor Subdivision. Please do enjoy this history of the Santa Fe's Harbor Subdivision between El Segundo and Wilmington, California. The Harbor Subdivision of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway was a 28-mile-long line between Redondo Junction in Vernon and Wilmington, California, via Inglewood, El Segundo, and Torrance. For this video, I will be focusing on the currently active section of the Harbor Subdivision between El Segundo and Wilmington and the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach. At the beginning of the 20th century, around 1900, there were three ports competing to serve the growing city of Los Angeles and the surrounding areas. These included Santa Monica, Redondo Beach, San Pedro, Long Beach, and even Newport Beach, which served Orange County. Starting around 1920, most traffic that used to go through Redondo Beach was being transferred to be shipped through the port at San Pedro and Long Beach. The Southern Pacific and Union Pacific railroads were enjoying the benefits of this growing port already, as they were the only railroads that served the docks. Santa Fe had attempted to gain access to Long Beach as early as the 1880s, but it was only until 1920 that a real effort was made to build to Los Angeles Harbor. On April 10, 1922, the Santa Fe and Los Angeles Harbor Railway Company was formed to build a line from Redondo Beach at El Segundo to Torrance and Wilmington. On November 4, 1922, a route was approved for connection to the harbor. Construction was underway by June 1923, and an extension would cost $1.5 million at the time. 7 bridges were initially constructed to avoid railroad crossing with the Pacific Electric, as well as busy road traffic in the area. Harbor officials, however, objected to the proposed construction of a crossing at Anaheim Boulevard in Wilmington, since there was already too much rail traffic, with a total of 4 competing railroads serving Los Angeles and Long Beach harbors, which were the Southern Pacific, Union Pacific, Pacific Electric, and the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe. The Harbor Belt Line was formed to take over and consolidate the switching of rail cars at the harbor. Each of these railroads had their own locomotives leased to the Harbor Belt Line to switch industries and the docks at the port. In the 1930s, the Santa Fe finally built a line that would give them access to Long Beach via the Southern Pacific tracks. This line would finally be completed after many delays in 1945 due to the war. After completion, the single-track Harbor Subdivision saw constant daily traffic for decades, moving cuts of freight cars between Hobart Yard in Los Angeles and Long Beach and Wilmington. The Harbor Subdivision hosted a large amount of local traffic as well, with many industries, spurs, and branch lines. The primary source of local traffic on the Harbor Subdivision came from the many oil derricks and refineries in the area. Oil was especially plentiful in the city of Torrance, with hundreds of oil derricks. Also, the refinery of the Standard Oil Company at El Segundo has been a major customer ever since the line opened. Due to the mainline status of the Harbor Subdivision, the Santa Fe put some of its larger equipment on the line. Some of the more common power in the steam days were 282 Mikados and some 060 switchers. The first diesels seen on the route were Baldwin center cab diesels of the 2600 class in 1948. The line saw all types of heavy freight diesel locomotives, from Baldwin's and Alcoa's, both classic and modern EMDs, and General Electric products. Some foreign power also appeared on the line, most notably in 1978 and 1979, when the Norfolk and Western leased engines due to the strikes that were occurring on their lines. Now, about the Alcoa Spur. Alcoa stood for Aluminum Company of America. The Alcoa Spur was originally built by the Southern Pacific prior to 1912 to service oil fields in Torrance. In the 1920s, when the Harbor Subdivision was being built, the spur was purchased by the Santa Fe Railway. The line served the McDonnell Douglas aircraft until its closure in 1988. The line was cut back to near Van Ness Avenue and officially abandoned east of Crenshaw Boulevard in the 2010s. The Torrance Oil Spur was built from a point near what is now the 190th Street Bridge in Torrance that goes over Alcoa Yard, and construction started in 1924 to serve oil fields just north of Carson Street near Madrona Avenue. The line was extended into Sepulveda Boulevard in 1934, where a platform was built for agricultural needs. In the late 40s, it was built to a point south of Lomita Boulevard. The line was completely removed in 1972. Back to the Harbor Subdivision. The line served dozens of industries through the decades, and it was a primary route for the Santa Fe for trains between Los Angeles and the harbors of Los Angeles and Long Beach. The Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe was merged in 1995 with the Burlington Northern to form the Burlington Northern and Santa Fe. The Southern Pacific's route to the harbor was sold in 1994 to the Port of Long Beach. The Alameda Corridor Transit Authority was formed to construct the current Alameda Corridor as a railroad freeway or expressway. The corridor was finally opened on April 15, 2002. The Santa Fe Harbor Subdivision's last through train to the harbor occurred on April 14, 2002, and all trains went through the new Alameda Corridor the day after. The 1920s built line between El Segundo and Wilmington is still in constant daily use as a local industrial line. Standard power on the line currently consists of ex-Santa Fe GP60s and GP60Ms, which serve the following industries as of 2021: the Chevron Refinery, Arkema Coating Resins, Prestone, Torrance Refinery, Messer Gases, Ganal Lumber Company, and American Styrenics. Now we take a look at what the Harbor Subdivision looks like today, and we start our trip in El Segundo and make our way south towards the harbor. And now I'm at the west end of the El Segundo Y, where they will be shunting some cars.
Hey, uppers, when we can, we need to shut back half a unit. Be good for 40. Point to the ground.
And there's the metro. Now the first feature south of El Segundo is Douglas Street, the bridge that goes over top of Douglas Street. That's the railroad bridge. Behind it is a pedestrian bridge, and above that is the metro station for the C line. And here's the Harbor Subdivision with an abandoned spur track. These tracks here were part of the Mattel Spur. It was named for the toy company, which used to have a manufacturing plant, which is on the other side of the 405 freeway. And on the other side of the freeway, which can be easily seen, is the old overpass or underpass, depending on which way you look at it, for the railway. In fact, there's still some tracks here. Now we are at 170th Street in Redondo Beach at Monaco Hill. So this is a hill at a 1.1% grade that goes up here, and the crest of the hill is at Monaco, I believe at Artesia Boulevard. Now the next feature here is the bridge at Artesia Boulevard. This might be original to the line. Now we are down at Nido Park, just south of 182nd Street. This location was formerly called Belvedere. In fact, there are some apartments with that name here. So here's the tracks, and right about where I'm standing is where the old Pacific Electric line was, and there was a bridge where the Harbor Subdivision went over top of those tracks. That has since been removed and filled in. It's a little loud, but we're at 190th and Hawthorne. The bridge here is over Hawthorne Boulevard, and that's 190th. I believe Hawthorne Boulevard Bridge is most likely original. Well, that one is obviously not. It's much later addition. And this is the north end of Alcoa Yard, which is officially known as Del Thorne. Now we're at Alcoa Yard, or in the vicinity, and the first customer on the Harbor Subdivision is Arkema Chemicals. The next industry served by the Harbor Subdivision is Prestone, and that's the tank cars for Prestone. Here's one of the many abandoned industrial spurs that are around the Harbor Subdivision, especially here in Torrance at Alcoa Yard. And now we're here down by the Torrance Oil Spur. Now this interesting piece of property used to be the right-of-way for the branch line down to the southern part of Torrance. Now I'm facing north right now, and that's towards Sepulveda, and the old line used to follow Madrona Avenue up to the bridge at 190th Street. And then south, this way, is 229th Place. I am at Crenshaw Boulevard at the old Alcoa Spur. The spur is still used to serve Messer gases, which is right there, but it has been abandoned from Crenshaw Boulevard onwards. And the last two industries in Torrance that are served by the Harbor Sub are Ganal Lumber Company and American Styrenics, or AMSTI. At the south end of Alcoa Yard is the second location of the Torrance Depot for the Harbor Subdivision, located right about in the center of the screen there. And right here is Crenshaw Boulevard. Now I'm at one of my favorite spots, the Dorado Street pedestrian crossing. Still has wooden construction. So I am just south of Carson Street, which is the grade crossing, which you see right over there. And this is the official milepost for the Torrance Depot. Now, I'm going to show a photo of the original depot, which used to be right about here in the center of the screen. Decent sized wooden structure with a spur track that came off the line back in that direction. And it split off somewhere down there. There's still a spur siding here that ends at the bumper there. Now we find ourselves at a place between Sepulveda Boulevard, which is this street, and Western Avenue. So this yard is mainly used for storage of long strings of auto racks, usually 3 sets, one placed on this siding, then another further down, and then there's another siding on the other side of Western over there. So here we are along Normandy Avenue at Ironsides. It's 2 sections of different types of bridge. One is an underslung girder, and this one is an above track girder. This open green space here was the Pacific Electric's San Pedro via Torrance line. These tracks were taken out by Southern Pacific in the early 1970s, and now we're here down by Watson Yard at East Lomita Boulevard. The road that all those trucks are on is East Lomita, and this is a railway crossing. This is Watson Junction here, and this forms a Y. There's one track in the front, another on the side, and then there's another track that goes behind the railway offices over there. So that building is the Watson Yard office, and this is the north end of Watson Yard here, and then I'll go down to the south end. Now I'm down at L Street in Wilmington, California, and this is the south end of Watson Yard. There are over 20 tracks, I forget the number exactly, but it is a very large yard. Now the locomotives usually get stored on the track that's furthest west, while all the other cars are classified on the other tracks. Now I'm here at Anaheim Street Crossing, which is behind the camera here, and this would be the southern end of the Santa Fe's Harbor Subdivision line. And it goes down to the harbor in that direction at Wilmington. There used to be a Pacific Electric line here that went diagonally across this intersection with the tracks and the road at the grade crossing. And they went down in that direction and came from that way. This is approximately where the Wilmington station was for the Santa Fe. Down that way was, and still is, tracks owned by the Harbor Belt Line and what is now the Pacific Harbor Line. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, do consider subscribing. And there is the part 2 to this video that is down in the description. It's an unlisted video. You'll see what it is, and trust me, you will not be disappointed. So, please do check out the video in the description. Follow me on Instagram, which is also in the description. Like this video, all those good YouTube stuff, you know the drill. And until next time, I'm Nate for Vintage Rails, and until then, God bless.